The three most important metrics for your success as a distance runner physiologically are going to be your running economy, your lactate threshold, and your VO2 max. But there is a fourth metric that's gaining a lot of attention right now because it describes the other three metrics, and that is your physiological resilience. Physiological resilience is basically how quickly those three metrics deteriorate over time as you get fatigued. Now, I just interviewed Dr. John Davis. He's a really great runner in his own right. He coaches some professional runners. He also just published an amazing book that I recommend to everyone. It's called Marathon Excellence for Everyone. And I just had him on the podcast to talk about marathon-specific physiological resilience. Let's see what he says about what exactly this term actually is.
Physiological resilience is something different. It is specifically what is the rate at which your other physiological characteristics, so running economy, VO2 max, and your steady state max, which are associated with your threshold, what's the rate at which those characteristics deteriorate over time? In the scientific literature, it's often quantified as the percentage of your steady state max, which you might estimate with LT2 or critical speed or maximal lactate steady state, some lab measure of what's the highest metabolic steady state you can sustain, without your blood lactate and oxygen consumption and heart rate, rising uncontrollably. What percentage of that steady state max can you sustain for the marathon? Because, your marathon pace is slower than your half marathon pace. Right? And your half marathon pace is slower than your 10-mile pace.
I hope so.
Even though all three of those events are at a metabolic steady state, meaning if you grabbed the Twin Cities 10 mile, for example, was this past weekend. If you grabbed somebody at 3 miles, 6 miles, and 8 miles into that race, tested their blood lactate, it'd be about the same, which is not the case with a 5K, right? And same thing, grab somebody at miles 3, 6, 8, 10, 12, 15 in the marathon, blood lactate, same level over time, no change. So it's at a steady state, but clearly people slow down. Why do they slow down? Well, because over time, the physical condition of their body deteriorates. And it's not just a fueling thing. It's not just that you run out of fuel and then you slow down. This is why, by the way, when we talk about hitting the wall in the marathon, most people who have a bad experience in the marathon don't actually feel like they're running great, and then suddenly they feel terrible. It's usually I feel great, I feel good, I feel okay, I feel not so good, I feel bad, I feel really bad. So physiological resilience is a way of quantifying what is the rate at which your fresh fitness deteriorates. So it's a very important factor for people who find that hey, I'm quite good at the 10K, pretty good at the half marathon, but I just can't put together a good marathon. That is fundamentally a physiological resilience problem.
So let's talk about some workouts to build physiological resilience. And they really come down to two different types of workouts. Intense sessions, usually done on hills, and race-specific sessions. Let's first start with hill workouts, because I think hill workouts are the gift that keeps on giving. If you have hills nearby and you're using them in your training in a variety of ways, you are building a lot of physiological resilience. And so you can do a classic hill workout, let's say 8 90-second reps at about 3K to 5K race effort up a 6 to 8% grade hill with a jog down recovery. This is a classic hill workout, and it's going to build a lot of physiological resilience because it's intense, but it's also a hill workout. So you are working against gravity. You also have to do your recovery running down the hill. And a session like this is going to be great at building the skills you need to prevent that deterioration later on in a race. Now, we can also move away from those traditional hill workouts and do downhill bouts at about your race pace, or maybe a little bit faster. So depending on what you're training for, you could run somewhere between 2 and 5, 6, 7 miles downhill at a slightly faster pace than your race pace. And this is going to inoculate you against some of the muscle damage that occurs later in a race and prevent that deterioration. Now that's really what hills are doing in both of these examples. You're exposing yourself to high levels of stress, particularly muscular stress. And hills almost work like a vaccine. It's a small dose that, through the repeated bout effect, inoculates you against this type of muscle damage in the future. So if you're preparing for a Revel downhill race, if you are getting ready for a hilly marathon like the Boston Marathon, one of the things that we should incorporate into your training are downhill bouts at slightly faster than marathon race pace, where you're going to incur that muscle damage and therefore get stronger from it because of the repeated bout effect. And you're not nearly going to slow down and deteriorate like you would if you hadn't done these kinds of workouts. Now, there are also race-specific workouts that are going to prepare you for the very specific demands physiologically of what you're going to experience on race day. And so if we stick with our hypothetical marathoner, then, a session like 20 miles with the last 6 to 8 miles at goal marathon pace, this is a great physiological resilience workout. It's going to build the systems, the fitness, and also the resilience that you need to run marathon pace after already running for a very long time. You can also just do what I might call fast long runs. Now, a more technical way of looking at this is, say you're going to go do a 20-mile long run, but instead of just doing it at your normal, easy running pace, you might do it at 90 to 95% of your marathon pace. And you might do it on rolling, hilly terrain. So it's not quite marathon pace, it's a little bit slower, but you are on hilly terrain, and you're going to do it for a very long time, about the entire duration of the run. I would probably advise most runners to run easy for about a mile before ramping up to about 90 to 95% of their marathon pace. But for the most part, most of this run is done close to your marathon pace. You're on hilly terrain, exposing yourself to the ups and the downs and those eccentric muscle contractions. And this is another really fantastic way of building very race-specific physiological resilience for an event like the marathon. Now, let's say you're not training for the marathon, you're training for a 5K. A specific workout for the 5K that's going to prepare you for the intensity of a race that short is something like, you go to the track and you might run 3 times a mile at your goal race pace with a very short 1-minute recovery. And so this kind of a workout very closely mimics exactly what you're going to experience on race day. You are not running your current 5K pace, you're running your goal 5K pace. So it's arguably going to be a little bit faster. And you're also only giving yourself a very scant 1-minute recovery. And so you can be rest assured that if you can do this workout, you should be very confident that you're going to be able to hit your goal pace on race day. I have upgraded my daily greens mix. You have to try how good Previnex's Gut and Green Superfoods mix is. It tastes way better than my last greens mix, and I'm so happy to have made the switch. Now, not just because it tastes better, but because it has twice the fiber, it has clinically proven ingredients that help with digestion and gut health, and it actually has fewer ingredients. And this is actually a good thing. My last greens mix had dozens and dozens of greens in it, but in such tiny quantities that you're not getting much out of it. I'd rather focus on quality over quantity. And like everything from Previnex, they have clinically studied ingredients that are going to help with your GI system, your digestion. It's going to reduce inflammation and really help with your gut health. So thank you, Previnex, for using clinically verified ingredients. You got to check out their amazing apple flavor on Previnex.com. And if you want 20% off, use code JASONGREENS. And by the way, for every order, Previnex donates a bottle of multivitamins to kids in need. So thank you, Previnex. So runners, if we want to resist the deterioration of our physiology late in a race, we've got to make sure that we have exposed ourselves to the very physiological stress that we're going to experience on race day. Part of that comes down to general training, so running high mileage, lifting weights, doing hard workouts in general is going to boost your ability to withstand that deterioration, but also getting specific. Running long, hard runs at goal marathon pace or similar, doing race-specific workouts if you're training for a much shorter race so that you're exposing yourself to that intensity. And then also not shying away from hills. Hills are so fantastic. Frank Shorter was right. Hills are speed work in disguise. But I might build on that and say they're also strength training in disguise. And when you combine speed with strength, that is a really wonderful physiological resilience stimulus. Now, I don't want you jumping into some of these hard workouts right away. These workouts are admittedly some of the harder examples of how you build physiological resilience. And almost just because I want to really drill the point home, I wanted to use some of the most specific, some of the most challenging workouts to drive that point home. Now, you should still just build from wherever you are currently at. So if your current long run is 15 miles, don't go run 20 miles with half of it at goal marathon pace. That's probably going to leave you injured. We don't want that. But what is one additional wrinkle or new stress that you can add to your existing runs? Maybe it's running a little bit longer. Maybe it's running on rolling terrain. Maybe it's, doing a fast finish run where you are going to be running a little bit harder at the end than you were for most of that run. Whatever it might be, remember to only take the next logical step. Don't try to leapfrog your way to some of these more advanced workouts. The workouts are like the icing on the cake. Let's get some of that foundation right, and then you can worry about some of these other things. And one thing that we should remember is that physiological resilience is almost built to enhance the other physiological metrics like your running economy or your efficiency, your lactate threshold, and your VO2 max. So let's make sure that we're also working on those metrics. You can run high mileage, you can do hard workouts, you can do aerobic workouts like half marathon pace, 10K pace, and your lactate threshold pace. These are all workouts that are going to do a great job of driving all those numbers up. And if we're doing that consistently, then our physiological resilience is also going to inch up and up. And that's what we want, especially if we are running long races where the potential for that degradation, that deterioration of our economy and our VO2 max really happens. For example, at the end of a marathon, the last 4 to 6 miles are very, very difficult. And so if you don't want to struggle as much through those, these examples of physiological resilience workouts are going to do a great job. So a big thanks to Dr. John Davis for his book, Marathon Excellence, and coming on the Strength Running Podcast to talk more about this topic. There's a link under this video if you want to check out either his book or the podcast episode where we go into a lot more detail on what exactly this is, some example workouts, mistakes to avoid, and also some really great lessons on progression. I hope you enjoy it.